Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OwlScoop.com. You already know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Scoop, OwlScoop.com's podcast, Season 8, Episode 26. I'm John DeCarlo. Kyle Gauss is off this week, but the good news is that Javon Edmonds and Caden Steele are not off this week. What's up, gentlemen? How are you?
We're doing good. Who needs Kyle when you got us two,
Exactly.
And Javon got the BurgerFi today, which I know he loves BurgerFi. I find BurgerFi to be one of the most disgusting places to eat at the student center. But, I can't hate on Javon.
And Caden has just assured us of never getting a sponsorship from BurgerFi, so thank you so much, Caden.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I screwed up.
I don't – listen, BurgerFi, the preferred burger chain of Temple's own E.J. Warner.
Yeah, I've never had any issues with BurgerFi. I did not get BurgerFi today.
It's not the best for your health, but hey.
No, I got a salad from Richie's Cafe, which was delightful. But have no issues with BurgerFi. Caden apparently does, but that's something that Caden's just going to have to do some soul searching about.
EJ was right behind me, ordered 3 double cheeseburgers.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't want to think of what would happen to me if I had 3 double cheeseburgers in one sitting, but nonetheless, got a lot to get to today. Of course, a big Temple basketball game coming up Sunday against number 3 Houston. We understand the game's selling pretty well, so if you don't have tickets yet, I would get on that. We've got some football to go over with you. Had a chance to also talk to Temple assistant coach Chris Clark this week. A lot of good stuff from Chris. We'll play that entire interview for you guys. Again, basketball and football mailbag questions to get to. So plenty to get to on this episode. We'll run through some famous numbers, 26s really quick. What do you have, guys?
Ooh, Clinton Portis.
You go Clinton Portis before you go Chase Utley?
See, I'm more of a football guy. I like all the other 3 Philly teams, but just football players come to mind first.
Sure, yeah.
Rod Woodson.
Yeah.
Ravens Super Bowl winner, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Matt and Kyer Elam. Yeah.
All right, so we got nothing else in the world of famous number 26s. Let's talk about this Temple basketball team. Obviously, they're 14-9 overall now, 8-2 in the American, in second place in the league standings, and of course, number 3 Houston's coming to the Liacouras Center. As I said, the game, from what we hear, I think the lower bowl is pretty much sold out at this point. So, God forbid, maybe we'll have a good crowd at the game Sunday. Again, if you guys are loyal listeners of this podcast, or you know half of what's going on with Temple sports right now, you know by now that Temple beat Houston on the road almost 2 weeks ago by a point when they were number 1. They did it without Jamille Reynolds, and now Jamille Reynolds is going to be back for Sunday. He's healthy. He's back now. Temple is 115th in the net rankings, 104th in the Ken Pom ratings. Again, that's a more of a predictive metric. Houston's 20-2 now. They're still number 1 in the net. So if Temple wins Sunday, they would go to 4-0 in quad 1 games. And for what it's worth, more of a respect thing than anything else, Andy Katz has Temple at 32nd in his Power 36 rankings. So we're recording this on a Thursday afternoon. So Houston plays at Wichita State later tonight before coming to Philly. And, we know the deal about this team. They're good. Marcus Sasser's the leading scorer, a very good guard. Temple held him to 12 points in the win at Houston. And then Cincinnati actually held them to 9 in that game last weekend where Houston squeaked that out at home. So, keeping an eye on him, trying to clamp down on him on defense, trying to shut him down will still probably be a big priority for Temple. They always seem up for the challenge in terms of trying to, of course, shut down the opposing team's best guard. But you got Jarris Walker to worry about. Again, they did a pretty good job of keeping him to pedestrian numbers of scoring in the last game, but he did get 12 boards against them. Juwan Roberts is their leading rebounder. You got Tremont Mark. Of course, his shot was the one that just bounced off the rim at the buzzer, and then Jamal Shad. So they're really balanced. They're really tough. What do we think about Sunday's game, guys? I think it's fair to say that Temple could beat them again. I think that they could. I'd be surprised if the game's not close. I'm kind of, as Kyle likes to say, I'm actually trending positive for Temple right now. I think maybe conventional wisdom would suggest that, okay, Houston's going to be really ticked off. They're going to come to North Philly and win this game. What are you guys feeling right now as of Thursday afternoon?
I'm feeling Temple does it again. They did it by playing awful basketball, and Jamille Reynolds was not on the floor. I don't see them repeating a performance like that. And when you got the big fellow down there, life gets easier. I think Temple pulls off a sweep.
Wow. See, I can't fully get there, like Javon said, but
is it because you haven't eaten BurgerFi? Javon might just be energized by BurgerFi right now.
No, this is. I've been saying this for a few days now. I feel like these guys are really going to pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you don't think they're going to play as sloppy as they did last time, and at one point was it 7 minutes they didn't score? Or
yes, last 7 minutes and change, which was again, if you watch that game, remember like that was more of a deliberate slow down. Didn't exactly look. They won the game, as Aaron McKee said after the game down in Houston. Didn't go the way they wanted it to, and he said I think his line was, Damian Dunn was kind of leaking oil at that point and kind of running on fumes, and it almost backfired on them. But they did win the game, but wasn't the best strategy in retrospect, with hindsight being 2020.
Yeah, and I guess playing kind of devil's advocate, then I don't think Houston is going to miss as many free throws as they did last time against Temple,
right?
And I don't think they're going to play as sloppy. That definitely wasn't their best brand of basketball, and I think if it comes down to it, like you mentioned, John, maybe if we don't buy into conventional wisdom that Houston isn't going to lose, as the top 5 team in the nation, lose to Temple twice in the same year. I think it's a close game. I just can't see Temple doing it twice. I think Houston bounces back. I think they're too good of a team to, I think in a sense, maybe this game has more on the line for Houston. Like Temple right now, even if you win this game, I don't think it means you're getting in the tournament. But if you're Houston and you have 2 losses in the last 2 weeks against a team that's not ranked, it's going to keep knocking down the rankings. I think they have a little more to play for, and I think they'll find a way.
Well, Houston is a lock for the tournament, so they don't really have much to put.
But you're going to lose a little bit of seeding. You're going to knock down.
They're playing for number 1 in the conference and to stay on the 1 line in March. A loss Sunday
knocks you down at 5.
They'll be no lower than a 3 line in March anyway. So
rankings doesn't matter, Caden. It's more just like, you're talking about seeding and stuff like that. But.
Yeah, like that top 25 means nothing to the committee. Just like in football, the AP's top 25 means nothing to the committee. So that's not even a motivating factor. Houston's only motivating factor is the 1, not get swept. All right, well, not only. Only motivating factors are the 1, not get swept, and the number 2, hold on to the top seed in the conference. And I think with Temple, who would need that top seed a lot more than Houston, will be playing for a lot more in front of a crowd that I'm sure they know they cannot let down anymore. So I don't know. I feel like the Owls just have more to play for, and they have arguably their best player back on the floor. I can see it happen. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Now, maybe there's a superstitious fan out there who says, no, I want Temple to lose this game because it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. And if they have to match up with Houston in the conference championship, then the Cougars would have to get it. So,
no. I agree with you, Javon. Let me ask you just from, beyond the obvious stuff, obviously helps to have Jamille Reynolds back. They were fortunate enough to beat Houston again a couple weeks ago without him. And we know how well Nick Jourdain played. We know how well defensively that Core John Cooch played. Also, a little shout out to Caden, who did a terrific story on Core in the Philadelphia Inquirer. If you have not read it yet, you should. Very, very good story. A little tip of the cap to Caden there. But with Jamille back, beyond the obvious stuff, again, like down the stretch at UCF, they found him for a couple of just it looked like basic like screen and roll stuff. It looked like, yes, he's been able to practice. They've been able to bring him up to speed. I'm sure his conditioning isn't where it needs to be just yet, but you can tell that they're really starting to kind of like find their rhythm with him. And we'll get into this in a little bit. You'll hear Chris Clark talk about this in the interview that we did with him. It looks like they kind of blended it in seamlessly, and they're starting to feel more comfortable as a team. Beyond the obvious, Javon, what changes with him back offensively, defensively? What do you see them trying to do with Jamille Reynolds against Houston? Because again, Sasser's good, but that front court is really good too with Walker and Roberts. And again, like their guards are long and lengthy, but what does Jamille give them on Sunday that they didn't have before. We know he can score. We know about the touch, but even just in terms of their offense, how much does it help them?
Yeah, a paint presence, a go-to bucket, a gravitational pull, so to speak. So at some point, you got to make up your mind. Are you going to just keep letting your guy get cooked one-on-one, or are you going to send a double team? If you're going to send a double team, who are you leaving? And Jamille's been pretty good at making passes out of the post this season. So it just opens up the offense in many different avenues. What happens is then McKee decides who to leave out there. And I think in a situation like that, it's got to be Hicks, White, Dunn, and Miller. And it's up to those guys to hit their shots. Dunn has become a much better catch-and-shoot guy this season. Battle seems to be back to his normal ways. It's up to Hicks to live up to his, his label as a sharpshooter. To be quite frank, he hasn't done it so far this season, not consistently at least. And then Hyseer Miller, he's got a habit of falling back into his old ways with his jumper, starting his jumper at his hip instead of starting it at his chest. When he remembers to do the small things with his shot, it starts to fall. So it really comes down to those two. How successful Temple is on the floor with Jamille.
So let's play this interview with Chris Clark. Again, I had the chance to talk to Chris. We're recording this on Thursday. Talked to Chris a couple days ago when he was out on the road recruiting, so I didn't get the chance to sit down face-to-face with them, but talked over the phone. A lot of good stuff here and just some insight into how the team has been playing recently, what they're expecting on Sunday, again, with Houston coming into town. So we'll play this interview for you right now. That Maryland Eastern Shore loss before Christmas, I would imagine, it had to be kind of a low point in the season. And then since then, you guys have won, I think, 8 of your last 10 games. What's changed since then for you guys? Because you're obviously playing some of your best basketball this season, 4 in a row now, heading into Sunday's big game. What changed after that for you guys?
You know what, John? I think our guys, their ability to adjust, right? Because, we added some new guys during the offseason, obviously getting Caleb back as well. I think our guys had to adjust to their new roles, obviously adding Core, adding Jamille, who those two guys are a big part of what we do. I just think it took time for us just to gel. Now, no excuses for why we lost those games, but I think now our guys they have a better understanding of how to play with one another. They know each other's strengths and weaknesses. They're learning how to cover for one another, take care of one another. So I think it just took us, a little more time than I think we wanted. I'm sure the fans felt the same way at that time. But now I think we're starting to hit our stride. Like I said, guys are starting to play together, understanding who they are, understanding how to win as well. That's a big part of it. And we still got some learning to do and growing to do in that area. But I think, we're starting to gel, at the right time. And hopefully we can continue to keep it going.
And then even, after the Memphis loss, I mean, Nick, couldn't have guarded the reigning conference player of the year any better there. And he just hits a baseline jumper, beat you guys at the buzzer. In a season that's had so many ups and downs, that could have gone the other way too. That could have sent you guys into a tailspin. But instead, you pull away from ECU, and then of course you go on the road and you beat Houston. What was there something after the Memphis game where you guys felt like, okay, this was a loss. We need every single one of these games. But did you even feel like in a loss, like you guys were getting a little closer?
Yeah, we felt like we were getting better, and I think our practices, was getting better. Competitive. We had more, focus, and there was just a feeling about our guys every single day that we were preparing to win each game. You know what I mean? There was a focus there. There was a, sense of pride. Like we let one go against Memphis. We should have won that game. And, we can compete with anybody in our league. And, I think our guys, started to buy into that and believe that. And, here we are. And, we got a chance to, play for first place on Sunday.
I don't know how long Jamille will be coming off the bench, but for now, you have arguably your top 3 players coming off the bench. And I mean, you look around the country, not like I've looked at every single team, but I can imagine we could count on one hand, if not that, maybe a couple of fingers, of how many coaches and how many staffs in America are doing that. But it's working for you guys. Can you just talk to me about, like, I know that you started the season bringing Caleb Battle off the bench, and then Damian was starting, and then you reacclimated Damian to the lineup after his concussion, but he's continued to come off the bench. And now Jamille, and, heading into that Houston game, people are thinking, like, wow, they're going up against the number 1 team in the country. How long are you guys going to wait before you bring in your top 2 scorers off the bench? But you did it at seemingly the right time, and you're still doing it. It's still working. And can you just talk to our listeners about the reasoning behind that and how it's worked for you guys?
Well, I mean, we needed some scoring off the bench. And the one thing I will say is those 3 guys really have embraced, that part of it.
And they're playing starters minutes at the end. I know they're playing starters minutes at the end of the day. They're logging 30-plus minutes, but still a big deal, I think, though.
It is a big deal, and I think it's a testament to those guys and who they are and how they embraced coming off the bench and allowing those other guys to sort of feel valued and a part of it as well, the guys that are starting for us now. And I think it's just a testament to those guys embracing it, buying into it, being a good teammate, and allowing us as a coaching staff to be able to manage personalities on our team. And it's not easy. That's a big part of it, but those 3 guys, and clearly they're our most talented players, but for them to be able to embrace that and still be a good teammate, still work hard every single day, still compete, it's a testament to who they are. And I think those guys are really focused on winning, and I think that's the key piece. Doesn't matter if I start, come off the bench, I just want to impact winning and contribute to winning. And those guys have bought into it, and it's made us better. It made us a lot better. And, we truly appreciate those guys sacrificing, the way they are.
And even just in particular, I mean, Caleb Battle, it's no secret that he's a really emotional guy. He's had his emotional up and downs on the court, off the court. Last Saturday at UCF, in a game that you guys needed, your second straight overtime game, again, off the bench, 35 minutes. He gives you guys a game-high 26 points, but just as important, 9 of 9 from the line. And again, I know he's been up and down this season, but is he starting to really get it and really starting to embrace his role? Again, he knows he's going to be, assuming, playing a ton of minutes, but I mean, a really big performance from him, not just shooting the ball, but at the line and rebounding the ball too.
Yeah, he was efficient. And the one thing I will say is he has really embraced the defensive side of it. I think he's improved tremendously defensively. And the offense is going to come. I mean, we told him that. We need K to score the ball. And he's a terrific talent. And he was efficient against UCF as well, shooting the ball. I think he shot 50% from the field in that game. And like you said, 9 for 9 from the free throw line. So we've been struggling as a whole offensively. Not as sure why, because we do have guys that can make shots. And we've been getting good shots, the last 4 or 5 games. It's not like we have been getting bad looks. We've been getting good shots. So we tell our guys, shots will fall. Don't worry about the offensive end. That'll take care of itself. But we got to defend. We got to rebound. We got to play with great energy. We got to play with that temple toughness, and the offense will come. So hopefully we continue to get better offensively, and we start to make a little more shots here, down the stretch of conference play.
I mean, it hasn't even been 2 weeks, but again, here comes Houston again. Now they've got one more game they got to play at Wichita State Thursday night before they come here to North Philly on Sunday for the big game. But I mean, not much changed. Sasser's still good, Shedd's good, Jarris Walker, a really talented freshman forward. You got Roberts. They're so good. They're so balanced. You guys were so good against them defensively. And again, it's kind of like pick your poison because they can hurt you in the backcourt and the front court. But you guys have had so much success and really keying in on that really good backcourt player, and you guys made things tough for Marcus Sasser. Is that still, not that you forget about the guys in the front court, obviously, but is the plan still to just make life as tough as possible for him, and then you just try to manage the other pieces of it?
Yeah, you said it best, John. They're really well balanced. I mean, when you try to take away, one guy, then, another guy beats you. And they have several guys that can beat you. I think for us, the thing that, we always talk about is, we have to rebound the ball well. And that's against everybody, but especially against Houston, because that's how they beat you. They beat you inside. And you have to defend the three, right? Because they have guys that can really shoot the ball. Obviously, Sasser, Sharp, Jarris Walker can make them. So we have to defend the three, and we have to limit their second chance opportunities. But, I think our guys are really, up for the challenge, against those guys. And we know what we're fighting for. We know what we're playing for. It's a chance for us to remain at the top of the conference, to be in first place. And, you have to make it tough for them because it's going to be a 40-minute battle. They're not going to quit. They have, championship, DNA over there. And we know it's going to be a full 40-minute hard-fought, tough game, and we have to play our best when our best is required. So we understand the assignment and what we have to do.
How do you guys get Zach going? He's had his ups and downs. Probably your best pure shooter. I know he's got to maybe learn a little bit better to put the ball on the floor and do some other things. And to his credit, he does rebound when a shot isn't falling. But if he can really get going, then you guys are obviously even much more dangerous. And he's hit a couple of timely threes, but he struggled again on Saturday. Is it just a matter of him just having some tough luck, or could you guys be getting him better looks? Could he be looking for better looks? How do you get him going?
Yeah, I think as a coach, we always try to find or create opportunities to get our guys, better looks or get our guys in space. So that's been, something that we've talked about to try to help Zach to get him more quality shots. I also think that he's starting, and because he's such a good player, that teams are preparing against him to stop him, especially in that starting lineup. I think teams are saying, all right, we're going to run him off the line. We're going to, pressure him and make him put that ball on the floor. And I think that Zach is capable of making plays with the ball. He's just got to get a little more comfortable. And he's got to move a little more off the ball. But, Zach's doing a terrific job for us in that starting lineup. He's playing a lot of minutes. And for a sophomore, him and Hasir, and Jalil as well. He's a redshirt junior, but it's the second year playing. Those guys are doing a fantastic job of just buying into their roles, buying into what Coach McKee is telling them to do. And Zach has improved defensively. So I think it's a balance too. I think he's playing hard defensively. He's rebounding the ball, like you said. He's guarding guys. We do switching a lot, so he's switching 1 through 4. So I think sometimes that takes a little bit away from the offensive end for him. So he has to learn how to balance. He has to continue to learn how to get shots, how to hunt shots on the offensive end. And he's learning and he's growing, and he'll be better for that. But hopefully he could, he gets hot here, down the stretch. In our last. We got 8 conference games left, so hopefully he can make some shots here, and I know he will. He works at it. He works at it a lot, so he'll make some shots here in the next couple games.
Chris, I know you're out on the road right now. You can't talk on the record about who you're looking at or who you're recruiting, but just a general question for you: when you guys start to turn it around, and then you obviously you beat Houston, you beat the number 1 team on the road, and you get that national recognition, what type of what kind of shot in the arm does that give you guys? And then when you're out on the road recruiting, what kind of reception do you get after a game like that?
It's awesome, man. It's awesome, walking into a gym, and obviously, it's on, Sports Center and social media, all the social media platforms. Temple beat the number 1 team, so it gives the kids an opportunity to see, oh wow, that's the assistant coach from Temple walking into the gym. They just beat Houston. So obviously it keeps us relevant. It keeps us viral, as the kids like to say. So we're excited about it. But, we still have a long way to go. It's just one game. But it definitely helps with recruiting. The more you win, the more exposure you get. The more opportunities, kids are able to see you on social media and on ESPN. So all that stuff is really cool. It helps with recruiting. But at the end of the day, we know, we got a long way to go. And, there's a lot more room to grow with this team, and hopefully we can continue to get better and win some games down the stretch.
Chris, one last one for you. I mean, I wanted to ask you about a couple guys that you see every day in practice that you'll need next year, and I'm assuming they're going to be redshirting for you. Taj Tweet, the West Virginia transfer from Wildwood Catholic, and then Deuce Roberts. Guys that I'm sure you'll need to lean on next year, depending on how things go with roster movement. What have you seen from those guys in practice? I would imagine that maybe Taj needs a year to kind of just reset himself, and then Deuce, a guy that you kind of had a lead on late in the game there, but you guys are high on both these guys. What have you seen from them in practice this year, even though they're not out on the floor playing on game days?
Well, Taj is like the man. He's an energy guy. He plays extremely hard. Always flying around, always talking. We got to tell him to shut up half the time because he's always, talking trash and, getting in guys' faces and bringing just great energy. And I think, our fans are going to love watching him play because of the type of energy and effort and athleticism that he brings to the floor. And just a guy that's willing to do the dirty work. And that's something that, we're going to need, moving forward. And Deuce is obviously he's going to be a combo guard for us. The thing that he's doing really well in practice over the last few months is being able to get penetration, being able to get downhill, get into the paint. Got to work on his shot a little bit, but he's a guy that can break the paint and get in there and make plays. So he's a guy that, hopefully we can, put the ball in his hands to be able to, make a play for himself or for his teammates. But those two guys, bring great energy every day in practice. They push that starting group. They make them better. And, they have to continue to get better. So hopefully they'll be able to, contribute at some point next year.
All right, so big thanks to Chris for spending time with us, and we'll look to catch up with Chris and Jimmy Fennerty as we do, a couple times throughout the season. They always give us a good scan of the roster, but he, if anything, I think seems pretty self-aware. At the beginning of our conversation, he said, guys are starting to adjust, and I think he caught himself right after that. I said, look, I mean, no excuses for the loss that we've had, and he didn't say it this way, but yeah, there's no excuse for losing to Wagner, no excuse for losing to Maryland Eastern Shore, no excuse for losing to Penn. If you win those 3 games alone, not even counting Vanderbilt, not even counting, Ole Miss, who knows where they'd be right now, but we know they'd be in a much better situation. I before we move on to the basketball mailbag here, I know it sounds kind of bland and basic, but is this just quite simply, for all the up and down basketball that we have seen and all the maddening fits and starts and all the head scratching, how the hell did they lose that game, or how did they turn the ball over that many times, those types of moments? Is it kind of as simple as that they are really just starting to figure each other out now, that Dame and KB are starting to learn, as Dame said, like when each other is hot, like when to feed them the ball, when to get the ball down to Jamille, like when, just when to feed off of each other? Is it kind of what Chris is saying, that they are finally starting to hit their stride? Again, in an ideal world, they would have done a hell of a lot sooner and not had some of these bad losses. But is it as simple as that? Devon shaking his head no.
I'm going to translate some basketball language to you. No, these guys understand they screwed up severely in the early part of the season. Mm-hmm. And they have zero room for error. They know they've got a lot riding on this, including careers after Temple, if they can't get it right. That's all this is. This is, oh, man, we messed up. Mm-hmm. Now they're on their best behavior, and playing their cleanest basketball that they can. It's nothing about them hitting their stride and all that. This team is capable of doing this all season long. This is a group of guys who are now understanding that they just simply cannot lose. Earlier in the season, they were a team that thought they couldn't be beat. Now they're a team that realizes they cannot lose. Big difference.
They shouldn't these guys have, and I would imagine that they do, shouldn't they have like a healthy amount of like they should be kind of ticked off right now, right? Like when they see what they're capable of, when they see that they were able to go to Houston, to the number one team in the country on the road and beat Houston without one of their most talented players. They're one of the best post players this program's had in maybe 10 years. They should be kind of ticked off, right? And say like, look at where we would, if we had just gotten our act together soon, look at where we'd be now. I mean, shouldn't they have a healthy dose of like ticked offness about them right now? Is that kind of what you're getting it with?
I promise you that's eating them alive, which makes what they're doing more impressive. Because a lot of teams would just cave it in right there. And guys would just give up like, oh man, look at this. We could have been doing this. Well, we're not going anywhere now. The hell with it. I'm sitting out. I'm hitting the portal. Or I'm just going to start playing nonchalantly. And these guys have stayed locked in and have not had that train of thought. So, no, all of that is going on through their minds, but that's what makes it more impressive that they're being able to play the type of ball that they are right now.
Hey, what's your read on it? Similar, different?
Yeah, I think in a sense, kind of going off Javon, where they realize they have to win all these games. It doesn't matter whether it's Houston, Tulsa, Wichita State. You don't have any room for error. And I think they've started to figure it out. And I think, at the end of the day, I was a little confused by the decision to put Damian Dunn and Caleb Battle off the bench, but it looks like it's working for Aaron McKie. So I think that was the right decision. And I think, over the last few weeks, they've gotten more production out of guys that weren't producing early in the year. Like John Cooch, although, he's not a high-end player, but he's done his job. He's filled out his role. He's gotten some rebounds, some blocks. He's got a block in that last Houston game. Nick Jordan as well. So I think they're getting contributions out of guys that weren't being as successful or weren't playing as good during non-conference play. But at the same sense, you look back at it, you can continue to play good in conference play, but you look back in that non-conference, it just makes it even more of a nightmare, because if you just win one or two of those games, I think the conversation's a lot different right now. So, yeah. I mean, they're doing it now, but it could be a little too late depending on, how the rest of the season plays out.
All right, so that's a really nice transition on Caden's part into the mailbag here when he's talking about the starting roles or bench roles for Damian Dunn and Caleb Battle. We're going to close out the mailbag and football portion of the podcast here with Caden. Javon had to dip out earlier. So the first basketball mailbag question here, again, these come from House Scoop subscribers. This is the screen name of one of our subscribers. What to you? Two-part question here. Number one, do you think this would be a wise game for Aaron McKie to start Damian Dunn and or Caleb Battle, or stick with the starting lineup he's gone with over the last month or so? Caden, I know what my answer is. I want to hear what you think.
I think if it's not, failing, why get rid of it? I think at this point, it's proven that it works. And look, from, I guess, a talent perspective, I really don't understand why it's working, because those first 2 or 3 minutes of the game, you don't have a lot of scoring out there. But I mean, Aaron's talked about it before, where that's really kind of how he wants to start his games, by establishing that defensive identity. And hey, last game, I know, things for this game have changed with Jamille Reynolds back, but the last game, they won that game by playing good defense. It was low scoring, and it seems to really just kind of fit their style. So if I'm Aaron McKie, I'm keeping what's working. And right now, they've won the majority of their conference games with this lineup, and got to give them, all the credit in the world right now. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I know it's a huge cliche, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, I think that the confidence that's been instilled in guys like Nick Jordan and Core John Cooch, I mean, again, like, they don't win that game. There are a lot of reasons why they won that game last weekend or 2 weekends ago, but they don't win that game without Core with that huge weak side block and Nick with the follow-up block. I do not think Aaron's going to do anything differently. Like, maybe you could see him start Jamille, but I don't. I think that Damian Dunn and Caleb Battle will continue to come off the bench. Now watch, they'll do something completely different, but I don't think they're going to change that. And we all know too that Damian Dunn and Caleb Battle end up playing starters minutes anyway. They always play 30, 35 plus minutes, but I think that he'll continue to go with what worked. And I think the one thing you just want to change down the stretch is maybe just keep your foot on the gas. If they find themselves up 5, up 7 in the last like 5 minutes, 6 minutes and change, instead of holding the ball, keep going. I think that might be the only thing that changes, but I agree. I think I don't think it would be a wise game for him to tinker with the starting lineup. I agree with you. All right. Now the second part of what TU's mailbag question here, for as much blame as Aaron McKie has gotten for the bad losses before conference play, how much credit does McKie deserve for the solid turnaround in conference play?
I mean, I think kind of going along, it's kind of similar to the last question in the sense where I think he deserves a lot of the credit because, I mean, I think he deserves some of the blame, especially during that non-conference play where Temple didn't seem prepared, especially against games against Wagner and Maryland Eastern Shore and Penn. But at the same time, it might have been a little too late in the season, like I guess 13 games in until he realized, that lineup wasn't working, but he made a change that's got this team to play better. And you probably wanted him to do that earlier in the year, but he did what he needed to do to get this team competitive in conference play. And Kyle's talked about before in the scoop where those non-conference games, although I still think you won to win those games, they really don't hold much weight right now. Those teams are all pretty bad. Villanova's pretty bad right now. None of those wins really stand out. Maybe, I guess, Rutgers is a decent win, but at this point, it's a new chapter of the season, and he's done what matters, right now. He's got this team playing hot, got this team playing really good going into the conference tournament in a couple of weeks. If they can continue to build on wins, they might end up, making some noise. So I think Aaron McKie, he deserves credit for what he did.
Yeah, I think he deserves a ton of credit. Aaron knows the game of basketball, and I do think he's a very, very solid coach. I get it. Of course, if you're going to lose to Wagner, you're going to lose to Maryland Eastern Shore. If you're going to lose the way they lost to Richmond, if you're going to lose to Vanderbilt, they were, again, like Chris just said earlier in the podcast here, they're going to be scrutinized for losing those games, no question. But I give Aaron a ton of credit, and I give the staff a ton of credit. This season could have gone even farther south than it was headed, and they have turned things around. What that turnaround ultimately ends up at, we don't know. Does it end up in an NCAA tournament berth? Does it end up in a just falling short of the NCAA tournament and the NIT? We'll find out. But I think they deserve a ton of credit. If you heard a segment of our conversation with Shiz Alston in last week's podcast, again, owlscoop.com subscribers will get access to, you didn't need a subscription to get the first part of the full first part of the interview. But in the second part, you need a subscription to listen to that. If you haven't checked it out, you should. A lot of great stuff from Shiz. He talks about what might have been had Jalen Brunson and had Jalen Brunson ended up at Temple, had Trey Lowe been healthy. Of course, Trey just had the really, really unfortunate circumstance where he ended up in a car accident, couldn't play college basketball again. And he's on Fran Dunphy's staff now at LaSalle. But one of the things that Shiz said, and he was right, like, how many coaches in America are bringing their two best players off the bench and succeeding with it? Aaron has found something that's worked. And if he ends up adjusting, he'll adjust. But give him a lot of credit. Give him a lot of credit for the adjustments they've made, for the turnaround they've made. Again, we'll see where it ends up. But yeah, sure. I think that's why in this business, it sounds like a bland and boring answer when we talk to people sometimes, when we say things are fluid and people want knee-jerk reactions out of us. Yeah, when they're playing poorly, we're going to tell you that they're playing poorly. But we got to give credit where credit's due. I think Aaron and the staff deserve a ton of credit for the turnaround. We'll see what happens Sunday, of course. Turning our attention to football, a couple of updates here, and then we've got a couple of football mailbag questions to close things out. So there was no media availability yesterday on the first day of the February National Signing Day. The team did officially announce the additions of 7 players, including, of course, the Florida transfers, DeJuan Black and Kamar Wilcoxon. We've talked to you about those guys already. A couple of big additions there. Reggie Jones from the College of the Canyons, defensive lineman. Landon Jones, the transfer tight end from Utah, who first talked to Kyle for a story we ran last week. If you have an OutScoop subscription, definitely check that out. Is a guy who probably is going to have to sit out this year. We'll see how things go because it is his third stop. Reggie Jones, the defensive lineman from College of the Canyons, mentioned him. And then Chris Van Ekeren, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, kicker from Purdue. They are bringing him in on scholarship. And they also announced a couple of preferred walk-ons. Hugo Gill, defensive lineman from Cheshire Academy in Connecticut. He's got some good size to him, 6'2", over 300 pounds. I guess Brylan Noonan, the long snapper from Wagner, they're coming in as they're coming in as preferred walk-ons. And I guess it's no. I'm sorry. Excuse me. It's Gill, Noonan, and Jones are coming in as preferred walk-ons. So Van Erken's on scholarship. So, but I thought it was kind of interesting that they announced them, even though they were PWOs, they're announcing them as additions. So, and not too far. I guess month and a half away from spring football. So we got stuff coming up. And as we've been saying in past episodes, the roster movement is probably not done. It's not going to be done even after spring ball. So those were the additions this week. And then another addition that the Temple has not made official, but Football Scoop was the first to report it, that Stan Drayton is going to hire Jamel Matunga as his running backs coach. So we know there was movement there. And with Preston Brown moving on, Jamel was with the Colts this past season as an inaugural Tony Dungy Diversity Coaching Fellow. He's been at Rutgers before that, Princeton and Lehigh. He was a really good running back at Gettysburg at the D3 level, and got his coaching career started at Muhlenberg. He's also worked in the Bill Walsh Minority Coaching Fellowship Program and spent time in the past with the Falcons and the Jets. He's, generally considered to be a rising star in the coaching profession. So, there's been a lot of movement at that position in the offseason, but looks like a pretty good hire there. So maybe we'll get a chance to speak to him at some point in the future once his hire is made official. And again, spring ball is just around the corner. So, and we'll continue to have some more recruiting coverage for you as well. Some offers have gone out to several 2024 players. So stay locked into the site for that. Got a couple football mailbag questions, like I said, to close things out here. First one from the screen name of Mike TB31, one of our loyal subscribers. His question: more likely to happen in the next 15 years, Temple gets into the new college football playoffs or makes an Elite Eight run in the NCAAs? Caden, what do you think?
That's such a tough question. I think if you think about the current states of the program, although Temple basketball has been playing better down the stretch, more than likely they're probably going to lose Caleb Battle. Maybe they end up losing Damian Dunn. Those two guys, probably the most likely guys to leave the program if they do leave. And then you have a lot of unknowns on this roster moving forward. We don't know much about the current recruits. And then you look at the football program, finished 3-9 back-to-back seasons, even though 3-9 this year is probably different than the 3-9 with Rod Carey. Yeah. But both programs really haven't gotten to the point where I feel confident with either answer. But I'll go with basketball just because anything can happen. Once you make March Madness, we've seen teams year in, year out, they're 10, 11 seeds, make the Sweet 16, make the Elite Eight. And I think it's more likely that could happen with Temple basketball in the future versus football, where you're in a conference where I think the American Athletic Conference is getting worse. You're losing Cincinnati, you're losing Houston, you're losing all these different programs. I think your strength of schedule is not going to look as good anymore. And I think even for Temple, I just can't see Temple being a top, is it 8 teams now in the college football playoff? Or
it's eventually going to expand beyond that. So I think the easier answer is it's going to be for you win a conference championship and you're going to be able to get in the future, especially in the next 15 years. So I think the easier answer might be for football. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I think there's a better pathway there. To get to the Elite Eight is really, really, for some programs it's been easier, but it's really, I'm not breaking any news when I say this, it's really, really hard to win in the NCAA tournament. There are so many examples you can point to. Talk to Fran Dunphy about it. I was talking to Shiz about this last week. Dunph had some really good teams and they just had some bad luck. I think we're talking about Fran Dunphy's legacy a little differently had they beaten Indiana. They scheme up plays and a guy like Scooty Randall just can't hit a shot. They lost in overtime to San Diego State against a Kawhi Leonard team that was really good. And they almost beat them without 2 injured starters. It's one game. You're in and out. We know that. I think it's really hard to get to an Elite Eight. It's just hard sometimes to get to that second weekend. I think it's with the field expanding. I think it's more likely that we'll see Temple get into the new college football playoff. Now, if you're talking about getting into the semifinals or like a national championship game, then I'm going hoops there because you can see the disparity, how quickly, TCU plays really, really well against Michigan. And then they just get wiped off the field against Georgia. But to get in, think it's more likely for football, but an interesting question to ponder nonetheless. And then to close things out here, from a question from the screen name TJ Clark, again, football related here, speculating on future performance. Was the transfer portal a net positive or a net negative for the football team this year?
I think in a sense it's a net positive because they picked up, a good amount of players. You mentioned Kamar Wilcoxon and DeJuan Black, who could, potentially be long-term pieces on this defense. The only real player that you ended up losing in that transfer portal that's going to hurt is Darian Varner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he had a really good year. He was a first-team all-conference selection for a reason. You probably hoped you could keep him in that room for at least another year.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that if he keeps building on it and he goes to Wisconsin, might be a guy who's an NFL-level player eventually. I mean, he's a little undersized, but he certainly fit Temple's system, and he was productive. And him and Leighton Jordan next to each other caused a lot of havoc for offensive lines for, certain games, especially during conference play this year. But at the same sense, most of the rest of the guys you lost, like Kobe Wilsons of the worlds, are easily replaceable. And I think you add some players, through the transfer portal, like I said, in Kamar Wilcoxon, that you can develop. You're going to need another corner to develop outside of Jalen McMurray, and same with DeJuan Black. And then you added a guy like EJ Wilson from Florida International, signed on signing day, but he's a transfer coming in from FIU. And although he's not super, doesn't have a crazy resume on him yet, that's another running back that you need in that room. So I think they did a good job in the transfer portal to add some players, and don't think they had too many losses other than one, really good player that they're going to have to find a way, to fill his need.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a net positive for them. And I think, as Kyle's pointed out a few times, it was going to be interesting to keep an eye on things in mid-January. Earlier, I have to check the calendar. It's February 2nd now. So earlier in January, I was going to say earlier this month, when that spring semester starts up, you keep an eye on how many guys are going to announce, because they want to keep their scholarship for the rest of the year, finish out this academic year at Temple. Yeah, I agree with you. Varner's a loss. And, from the outside looking in, you're thinking, okay, who's going to hit the portal in January? Who's going to announce when that second semester starts? I think that Trey Blair wasn't a surprise. I think he's a terrific kid. I wish him well. Like I said, I'm a little biased. I spent a lot of time with him on signing day a couple of years ago. Live right down the street from Haverford High School, in Havertown. And I think he's a really smart kid, a terrific kid, and will probably do well somewhere else. Just couldn't really turn the corner in a running back battle that was really open there. Varner's a loss. I think that Kobe Wilson, again, people were really intrigued when he joined the program a couple of years ago because he had a late offer from Georgia. But I think it's pretty clear that DJ Elliott prefers some taller, longer, more athletic corners. I think Kobe could end up doing really well wherever he ends up. But again, and we'll see how things go after spring ball. But as of now, yeah, I think if especially a guy like Kamar Wilcoxon, who can play safety, gives you a lot of versatility back there, was a high-level recruit. Same thing with DeJuan Black, and DeJuan Black's got to come and improve himself. And like I said, Landon Jones, a guy that's probably not going to play this year. But yeah, I think it's a net positive for him right now. Again, we'll keep an eye on things after spring ball. Again, there always could be some late roster movement there, but I think they kind of, as of now, really weathered the storm when they could have had some additional guys, plucked from the roster. And as of now, that's a tribute to Stan Drayton and his staff. Again, they were 3-9, but there's some talent on this roster. I know the fan base kind of, as of now, is breathing a collective sigh of relief, because now, if any player is good, how much anxiety was there? Like, oh my God, is some other program going to come along and pluck EJ Warner? Are they going to take this guy? Are they going to take that guy? But so far, I think it's very clearly a net positive for the program. So big thank you to all of you for asking mailbag questions this week. Thanks to Chris Clark for making time for an interview earlier this week that we had the pleasure of enjoying. We will talk to you guys next week after this big Temple Houston game, and we'll see where the Owls are next week. So thanks again for tuning in. Talk to you soon.